So Spencer, do you have anything you want to say to the group before I start with some of the questions?
Well, good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor. I mean, talk to Franciscan University. I mean, I'm a Catholic. I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana, born and raised. Went to Cathedral Carmel. I've gone to Catholic school from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, and Catholic and faith is a big part of everything that I do. And like they say, faith moves mountains, and you can do anything with God. So I truly believe that, and it's just a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Spencer. All right, well, let's go right at it. You know, you've trained some exceptional people, whether on the side or even athletes, like we talked about with John. And I bring John up because I see him in the gym a lot, and it's amazing to watch how hard he works. When you work with people that are truly the best in the world at what they do, what makes them different?
There are some physical gifts, right? I mean, let's not deny the fact, right? I've worked with John Rahm, Lindsay Davenport, Dominican Sue. I mean, guys who truly they're special, right? There's some things that make them special, but what really is a separating factor is not physical ability. Let's be clear. And John's one of the greatest cases because here's a guy coming out of Spain, was not the number one player in the world, was not well known. This guy has a club foot. He broke it at birth. It was completely inverted. They had to break it right at birth, put it in a cast, lock it up. So there's no mobility in the ankle. I mean, he wears two different size shoes. And if you ever see him in shorts, you'll see his left leg looks like an NFL linebacker and his right leg looks like a 13-year-old athlete. So it's like two completely different sides. Guy really couldn't speak English when he came to the United States. But it's his mindset. And the biggest separator for all these athletes is their mindset. Their mindset of they focus on the process. They have there's two things that really make them different. They have physical gifts and skill sets, right? But they have this very innate ability to learn. Their ability to learn and grasp concepts and information is impeccable. So it's phenomenal to see that. The biggest thing is also too is how they view stress. I think that's the other thing is they view their situation where if something's not going their way, it's not, oh my God, we can't get out of it. It's like, all right, watch this. I'm put the show on now. Here we go. I'm gonna get up and down. I'm gonna get out of this. I'm gonna overcome this challenge. I'm gonna deal with this. So those are the things, and they also are great at compartmentalizing, right? So they can take what happened to them in one situation doesn't carry over to every situation in their life. And what happens, and what a lot of people, if anybody's ever seen the Tom Brady special that came out recently of The Man in the Arena, that's truly what it is that what a lot of people don't understand is their biggest stressor is not in the arena. It's not in the sport, not in the court or the field of sport. It's everything they have to deal with outside of the sport. That's the biggest stressor for them. Family, commitments, sponsors, agents, right? Those are the things that really tax them a lot. We had a really, one of the things that, you talk about committing to a process, Bob, we've talked about this so many times. A lot of people talk about this, but earlier this year, we sat down. John's good friends with a guy named Michael Phelps. And we sat down with Michael for about 2 hours and talked to him like, hey, how did you sustain this level of excellence for so long? And he was like, I just made sure that nothing got in the way of my process. He goes, like, I was not always the best person to be around. I could have handled situations better. But at the same time, I told everybody, I go, hey, like, look, let me tell you, everybody, like media, they want to do 2-hour interviews. They wanted to take up his time here, and everybody will suck your time. Their energy sucks. And he'll be like, look, let me tell you something. This whole thing, you don't have a job if this is not right. If I'm not doing my job and I'm at the highest level and optimizing everything I could do, like, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, he would make people wait 2 hours after he's done swimming just so he can recover. So mindset, ability to hold stress, focus on their process, and compartmentalize is what makes them truly special.
Thank you. I love that. All right, you're talking to a group of aspiring entrepreneurs and college students. what recommendations would you share with them of how to take care of themselves and be the best version of their potential? Knowing what college life is like, go back to it.
I mean, you're in the OH. I mean, it's a beautiful Scots country over there. So, one thing is work on creating your process, right? And that starts off with to optimize your sleep. Like sleep is, if you say one thing that's the most important thing that any person can do, is making sure they get their sleep right. Because there's two things that happen in sleep. The first one is you have REM sleep, right? So REM sleep is when we dream. That's when we have our dreams, our thoughts, these crazy things that happen in our head. And that only happens during REM sleep. REM sleep is also too when we repair cognitively from the day. So our brain repairs, and when you're learning new information, if you're not getting enough REM sleep, that your ability to retain that information, learn that information, doesn't happen as well. So making sure you're getting, the second part of it is deep sleep. So what a lot of people don't know about deep sleep is when you produce 90% of all your hormones. So testosterone levels, estrogen levels, all your things that control everything that happens hormonally in your body happens in your deep sleep. So if you're not getting enough deep sleep and REM sleep, your body's not recovering. You're not getting all the nutrients to repair physically, because at the end of the day, stress is stress. Whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, or whether it's mental stress, it's all the same to the body. The body doesn't know any different, except some things got more beat up than others. So making sure you're taking time to recover. I think the biggest thing is, and then getting back into your process, just because I do something some way or Bob does something some way, understand what the principle is and not just doing what Bob does. Because at the end of the day, you have to own that process. And so this kind of goes into, when we're talking about process, it starts in the morning. The first thing you do in the morning, right? If you're getting up and you're checking Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, which are all great platforms, and they all have, sometimes relative information, sometimes not, depending on how they're treating you that day. If you start with that, then immediately somebody else is in control of your day, right? Somebody else is now controlling your life. So take that time for you. Be selfish. Like that's the one thing. Like you have to understand. Like if you're a high performer, everybody in this room is a high performer. They just may not play a sport that millions of people watch or thousands of people watch, but you're a high performer in life. You're a high performer, whether it's in the business world, or it's a high performer for your family, or you're just a high performer in individual. You want to talk about the Christianity part of it is, God wants you to be the best self you could be. So making sure you're doing little things. And so that starts in the morning, taking that time to making sure you're hydrating and doing all the little things, because the first thing that happens when we're under stress, what do? We freak out and we let all the little things go that make us great. We stop doing, right? And we just get overwhelmed. So taking that time, spend that time in prayer. And then also too, if you're looking at this, you want to create habits. So I'll give you an example of this. When we talk about behavior change, right? The first thing you have to do is create awareness, right? Then you have to create contemplation, then you make decisions, you take action. So when you're looking at habits, sustainable habits is what wins. And consistency is what wins. So you could have the greatest nutrition strategy, but if you're not consistent with it, it doesn't matter, right? Because consistency wins. So making sure whatever you're doing and implementing, and this is what we kind of talk about, and I'm sure everybody can relate, is anybody over here have done a full work over, like, okay, I'm gonna change my whole life, right? I'm gonna start drinking enough water. I'm gonna sleep. I'm gonna change my whole diet. And guess what happens? 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, stress happens, life happens. Oh, I can't do it anymore. I just need to get a burger and fries and a beer and just leave me alone. So making sure like that you have those habits built. So when those stressful moments happen, and then you want to implement one thing at a time. So talking about behavior change is, here's some statistics, because everybody here's an entrepreneur and loves some stats. I know Bob loves some stats. So if I implement one habit change at a time, I have over a 70 to 80% success rate of that happening. Okay, cool. Everybody cool with that? All right. If I implement 2 habits at a time, I have a 30% habit. So if I start hydrating enough and I go to bed and I start eating more vegetables, or I'm working out, or I'm going for a walk every day, 2 habits at a time, I have only 30%. If I do 3 habit changes, 3 changes in my life at one time, I have less than 10% success rate. So when you're thinking about when you're implementing a strategy, you don't want to take a performance enhancing strategy, make it into a performance enhancing stressor, right? Because everybody here, I'm sure, with school, life, you have enough stress in your life. So making sure you keep it simple for yourself. So making sure you focus on one habit at a time, and then you have to ask yourself on a confidence scale. So when you're implementing behavior change, if I ask Bob, if we're going to drink water, if I want you to increase your water by 50 ounces a day, right? Is that possible for you? I want to tell me on a 1 to 10 scale, be honest with yourself. 1, no way in hell, Spence, you're crazy, you're ludicrous, not going to happen. 10, I'm going to knock it out the park. I need Bob to tell me it's an 8 or higher. Because if it's not an 8 or higher in my confidence scale, my true confidence scale, then now I just implement another stressor in my life, right? And it's not going to be sustainable. Then once you get 1, get 2, get 3, get 4, get 5. So, know your process. Own your process starts with your morning routine. That's huge. And the second thing is create sustainable habits that you can be consistent with. Consistency wins over accuracy every single day.
I appreciate that. I want to repeat something to make sure I understood it right. You were saying that if it's a habit you want to introduce and you feel that your probability of achieving it is less than 8, that you're better off not doing it because you actually are introducing another stress.
So, or change it, right? So, or make it to where, okay, if 50 ounces of water is too much, and be, okay, hey, Bob, you know what? We're going to do one. Let's just increase. Can you drink 1 more bottle of water today? Right? I'm making water simple. It can be anything. So, have you guys ever read? There's a I can't remember the name of the book, but it's about habit change. It's not Power of Habits. It's Atomic Habits. That's it. The guy talked about how he lost like 300 pounds, right? And one of the things that all he did for the first 30 days, I think, is he went to the gym, he sat down there for 5 minutes and left. That was it, right? Because then he made it consistently part of his life. Then he went for 10 minutes. Then he got up and he walked on the treadmill for 5 minutes. He did that for 30 days, right? And then he just build. And then eventually, he focused on the process. Guess what? He achieved the outcome, right? So that's something that is just like, as small as you may think it is and think it's irrelevant, just being consistent. Like, today we got up, I normally do a 20-minute walk. I didn't have time to do my 20-minute walk. So I came in, got in, hopped on the bike right here, got a nice little 5-10 minute, because something's better than nothing. So I got a nice little 5 minutes, get my heart rate up, get my brain going, get my endorphins going, get my right and left hemisphere connected, because exercise, I'm also ADD, I'm dysgraphic dyslexia. We can talk about that more later. But exercise is one of the biggest performance enhancers for cognitive function of the brain.
Oh, what a great story. 5 minutes, go to the gym. I didn't know that one. And I know the book. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, it might have been a podcast off the book, Bob, but I just remember that story.
I think we'll all remember that one. It's a great example, starting with steps like that. When you think about your experience as an entrepreneur, what are some of the lessons? What are some of the things that you would share?
So, I mean, first I'll address one issue on that, or one thing. I've been classified as an entrepreneur. I've never looked at myself as an entrepreneur, right? I looked at myself. So my degree is in exercise physiology and biomechanics, right? So I always looked at myself as I just happen to have a skill set that also applied, because to me, coaching an athlete or coaching a human being and coaching is the same thing as business and training, right? It's the same thing. It's like we got to have an assessment process. We got to know where we're at. We got to answer three fundamental questions always, right? Where are we, where are we going, and how we're going to get there? It's that simple, right? And then what, where, and how. What are we going to do? How we're going to do it? Where we're going to do it? So we're looking at this and we're understanding entrepreneurship and the challenges and how, and I think the question was, how do we overcome challenges, right, Bob? All right, the challenges we face. And so it goes back into kind of what, being dyslexic and dysgraphic. So dyslexia. So I have I got diagnosed in first grade with dyslexia. I wrote my name completely backwards in the opposite direction. So if you took a shirt and put it on a mirror, that's me, right? I was that kid. So and I get diagnosed. And thank God, I mean, it was a blessing in disguise that my mom, who I love to death, is one of the hardest working people I know. She actually has a degree. Her degree is in special needs and learning disabilities. So that was, huge. So having that, learning how to overcome challenges at such a young age, and my dysgraphia. So I have a language problem, right? So you wouldn't know it necessarily by my speech, but it took me, actually I was a late speaker as a child. And also too, like, I mean, the traditional educational model, especially in the younger grades, is extremely hard for me. So, but I have this really gift for mathematics. So give you an example, I went to Ohio University. I tested out all mathematics. I took calculus 1 and 2 for as electives as fun. So physics, calculus is my jam. So don't ask me to do calculus right now because I probably don't remember how to do it. But at that time, I was a rock star. So challenges as an entrepreneur is, it's never going to go the way you plan, right? And you can't be, I think in the old, I mean, Bob, you know this because you're older than I am. But the old business model was this like linear business model. Okay, we do X, we do X, we do X, we do X, we do X. Well, the world doesn't work like that today, right? It's an agile model, a double diamond agile model, however you want to look at it. It's constantly changing. It's like Bruce Lee said, we're constantly changing. The world is constantly changing, but it remains changeless. And what I mean by that is that, the way we communicate now, the way technology is driving everything, the way, we've collected more data in the last, 5 years than we collected in the whole human history of the whole human race, that we're learning more than we ever learned before, or 10 years. So, it's not being so set and so limited by your structure or what you think your life's going to be, but always be super clear in your vision, right? For me, my vision has never changed. My vision has been 100% always the same, but the verticals I play in, the verticals of life have changed. Like, first of all, if you'd have told me that I'm living in Scottsdale, Arizona, or I went to Ohio University or 14 Military Academy, 14 in Virginia, or lived in Orange County, California when I was a young kid in Lafayette, Louisiana, I'd be like, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. But it's just, I trusted in God, right? I mean, I took jobs that had no guarantee, that were, to most people, were risk, but to me, it wasn't, because I had such a high belief in myself. So as an entrepreneur, to overcome challenges, you have to have a high belief in self, right? Have that confidence to it. No matter what, I'm gonna figure it out. And that's, to me, is what entrepreneurship is that what people, I don't know if you guys have heard this. People see things sometimes as challenges. I see them a lot of times as opportunities. Case in point, there's a great story. There's two guys. This company sent two salesmen to Africa. One went to Africa and he landed there and he calls back. He's like, boss, and this is entrepreneurship. Boss, you won't believe this. No one's wearing shoes. This is not a good idea. We're out. And so he came home. Next guy lands in Africa. Boom, picks the phone. Boss, you won't believe this. No one's wearing shoes. We're going to kill it. Right? Because he saw where what everybody thinks is a challenge, there's nothing there. Like, he saw it as an opportunity. I think that's kind of, I have an opportunist at heart. If you show me that I see a very clear pathway, I may not know exactly how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to hit it. I'm going to hit it hard. I'm going to go and I'm going to figure it out. Right? Because I think as an entrepreneur, you have to have grittiness, and knowing that no matter what, you're going to figure it out, and just know it's never going to go like this. I wish it did. I mean, I'm sure Bob wish I could tell you the same way. I think everybody here in this room knows that life never goes like this. We wish it did. It goes like this, right? It's up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. But the better we are, these more, I think the one thing I've learned and taken away from my life that I can share with anybody is that in the moment you face challenges, you have to take back and take a breath and be like, this is when growth's going to happen. This moment right here is going to change my life. Every dramatic situation I've had, whether it's dyslexia, whether people told me I wasn't going to graduate high school, or I couldn't be an honor roll student, I was going to struggle, right? Or you're crazy going to California and taking a job for $3,000, for 3 months, and then you got to figure it out from there. I don't know a soul in Orange County, California. ACL, hip labrum tear, dislocated elbow, torn hamstrings, whatever. Every single one of those moments have created who I am today, has became part of my story, and has taught me more about life than any success I've ever had in life. And those moments right there define you as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you're going to have things that are going to hit you on the side of the head that you could never expect would happen. You would think like, oh my God, how could this ever happen? And in case in point, it's like, look at Peloton. COVID, poof, killed it, right? Crushed it. I mean, one of the fastest growing companies now, roller coaster downhill fast, right? So, and I think one thing as an entrepreneurial student, as a person who's looking to disrupt the world and not being afraid of that, is just know that there's always going to be in the moment of darkness, that's when the light's going to shine the brightest. You're going to find your way.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. You said a couple things that I think are really important. One is, and I believe this, my wife said this after we moved 8 times in 9 years with startups. She said, we have 2 things that are carrying us. One is our faith and the other is our love of roller coasters. Because you got to be comfortable losing your stomach and enjoy every track on the way up, not knowing where it's going. So I really appreciate that. When you think about it, you said a key word that I think is a really important one, knowing you as well as I do, and also the success you have, both as someone that's with you, as an advisor, but also someone who's also a customer with you. Disruption. You're not there to be a me too. You think there's things in the industry that are wrong. You think things that are just, there's opportunity. Go a little further on how you think about that with disruption versus just a me too or creating a business for the sake of money.
Yeah. It kind of, one of the things I always think about when we talk about that is don't skate like Wayne Gretzky, one of the greatest hockey players of all time. Right? He has this great quote of, he never skated to where the puck was at. He always skated to where the puck was going to be. Right. And I think that's the one thing is you got to look at if it's already happening, you're already behind the 8 ball. Like, you're done. Like, might as well just say I'm gonna be everybody else. I think for us, and what I think about is not where the puck's going to be, but what are the problems we're facing, right? As what is the problem the industry's facing? What is the problem, and then how do we solve it, right? I think that the first thing I always look is, okay, what is the root cause? It's like, I mean, for me, what frustrated me the most about the healthcare system, which I call the sick care system, because it's not really improving people's health. There's a lot of great people out there, but there's some people who don't. Is that they just get by. It's like for me, I had 2 major non-contact injuries, right? I had an ACL tear in my left knee and I had a labrum tear in my right hip. Both of them were non-contact. Like, no one hit me. Like, I wasn't hit. So they're just like, well, it just happens. I'm like, well, why did it just happen? What was the cause? Like, what is the rate limiting factor? What's really happening here? And so going on trying to find what is that root cause? What is the true issue of the problem? And the market may not know that, right? You as an industry leader, whatever industry that is, you're going to know what the market is saying, but then there's also what they don't know. And so looking at how do we solve the root cause? And then if you can solve that root cause, then how do you implement into a product? I think what happens, I mean, especially as me, I mean, one of the things that I did, as I'm a service, I was a lot of stuff I did early in my career was I was a fee for service person, right? You come in, you want a service, I delivered, right? Is that I was thinking about, I always wanted to create the best service I could possibly create, right? Like, what is the best thing I could do? Go above and beyond for my clients, everything from call to text. But you know what? And then, you have to start realizing is like, okay, what is the product I'm building? Like, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? And then how do I teach that? I think if you can come in with that mindset as an entrepreneur, thinking like, okay, what's the problem? Okay, what's a product we can build for that has a suite of services and news? Services are always going to be there. The services support the product, right? And the product supports the brand's mission. So having that, knowing, because people buy brands and they buy products. They don't necessarily buy one-off services. And then you can think from there, as you're doing one of the things that I wish I did more early on was write about my day in journal and write about the successes I had and be able to have that whole log. And I mean, I have it in my head, but be able to have that down, because everything that you do, I always think about now is everything that I do, how can I make money, or how can I use it in 5 other different ways, right? So if we're going to do testing on an athlete, let's just use like jump testing, or we're very big in diagnostics. I'm going to use jump testing. Okay, how can I use it for Bob, the client, right? How can we use it as an organization? How can another organization use that? How can I use that from a marketing perspective and storytelling perspective and presentation perspective? How can they use it for research? How can I make that to give unique insights into teams and organizations, everything else? So I'm thinking, okay, we're going to do something. How do I take my one shot of doing something and it'd be a multiplier of 5 or 6? So I think as an entrepreneur, like always thinking about those ways of creating products, understanding the true challenge, and then how do you solve them and how do you build a product around that? It was with the deliverables underneath that is huge. And I think also I think one thing that I've learned from Bob is, and my parents, everything is like, it's like Jesus was there, the apostles, everything. They were all great teachers. You always need to work on being a great teacher. And that comes in different forms and different skill sets. But be able to teach something is one of the biggest gifts. If you have a thinking about how can I teach that to others in the most minimal way that they can walk away, I got it. That's huge.
Thank you. And thank you for the kind words. We learned some of that together. We cover some of that in the entrepreneur class, where we got Seth Godin's book, which is a really good one. This is marketing, and he talks about don't build keys, go find a lock, right?
Mm-hmm.
Find the lock problem. What's the lock you want to unlock? Then go and go to the end, find it, not in the middle. So I appreciate the context around that. Spencer, one of the things that's important to me is people I admire, both that are still here and that aren't here, and studying and learning from them and their experiences. So that's why I love biographies. I love history, podcasts, a lot of things that you and I share in common as well. For the sake of everybody here, who are some of the people that you admire, or books, podcasts, videos that you would recommend that have been meaningful to you along the journey? And sometimes you may even go back to.
Man, you open up Pandora's box here, Bob. So I love how we built this podcast. If you guys ever have a chance to listen to that, Ray Guy, he's a great podcaster. There's a reason why he gets paid the money he does. Ray Guy, I think it's fantastic, and what he does with how I built this. One thing I recently liked is Business Wars. I think that was a Ray Guy runs that too, by the way. But it talks about like the difference, how Nike and Adidas, and how Nike made one way and Adidas made the other way. So that's one. People I admire, and I'll get into the book section in a second. That's a lot. There's a lot of people I admire for different reasons. I respect Tom Brady and what he did, right? Like you have to, I'm not like a Patriots fan or a big Tom Brady fan, but I respect, like, here's a guy who has overcome so many odds, right? I know he went to Michigan. I know we probably got Buckeyes in here that I'm not a big fan of him, but what he's done is pretty incredible. So that was pretty cool. Just the way he's so committed to his process, right? He's so committed to and diligent in everything he does. And I know this from firsthand because I work with I've worked with Adamica. I've had many talks with Adamica, Sue, about this. And Kevin Minter, who's a small partner of mine, who played for the Bucs and was a captain for the Bucs. But he talks about, Tom just wants to be one of the guys, and he just loves that. And but he's like so committed. Like, he's like, funny thing is, they're like, man, we never even seen Tom shower, because he's like, he's in, he's out, he's got his treatment. Like, he's always like this. Like, does Tom even shower? So that's how committed Tom is.
You know, tell me if this is what I heard from Teddy Bruschi. He said Tom Brady does drills that most quarterbacks stop doing their senior year in college because they're boring. And he's learned to love just the fundamentals of even just footwork.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's so diligent. And that was the thing. That was pretty cool. So like when we talked to Phelps, Michael had gotten so in tuned that he could be, there's a couple things. Like one, he got so in tune with the feel of the water. He could tell you exactly in the race what the exact stroke that was off and where it was in the race. And he got so in tune with his process and the feel of the water. He told us he could feel the water on the back of his feet when he was swimming. Like he could feel the water on the back of his hands and he would put blackout goggles on. This is true story. Put blackout goggles on. Totally can't see. Jump in the water and swim his race in the pool completely blind because he wanted to know exactly how it felt. And so like that to me was like, I mean, that was incredible. I mean, the fact that he said that. And then, here's the other thing. This is one more story about Michael that he told us that I thought was truly fascinating. So about people I admire is that, he figured out two things. One, that if he trained every single day of the year leading into the Olympics, right? So for 6.5 years, he never took one day off. Didn't take one day off, not one. And that if he did that, he was going to be a year and a half ahead of every single swimmer in training and development than they could be because he swam that extra day. Just by that small commitment. So
I want to share something with this. Mark Cuban said the same thing, which is why he doesn't make his bed. He said when he timed himself of how long it takes to make his bed as an entrepreneur and business person, he said he found out it's going to cost him about 40 days in his life, and he wasn't going to give up 40 days in his life.
I bet you the Amarillo of Texas, who gave the speech in Texas, would argue something different.
Yeah, it's interesting where people go. And I know I work with two CEOs that wear the same clothes every day. They don't want to think about changing. They just got their white shirt and
For
their jeans. That's it.
So I took that same, because Steve Jobs did that, right? That was his whole deal, right? And so I took that. So with John, I run all performance with John Rahm. So one thing with John, and he's done this. If you watch it now, I was like, look, bub, when you go to a tournament, every single your outfit should be laid out, ready to go. But when you get there, because there's one less decision you have to make that day, and so exactly. So if you ever watch on Sunday, he's always in red. He's always in his blue pants, always, right? Because that's one decision less. I took that from Steve Jobs. I was like, look, well, you need to eliminate every single decision that you can't put into your business or into your golf game or into being a high performer. It's like that should all be taken care of. So that's one thing. The other thing about Mike, this is another good thing. Talk about process. Leading up to the Olympics for 6 months, depending on where the Olympics was, he woke up at the time he'd have to wake up, the exact time, and did exactly the same thing he would do every single day leading up to the Olympics. So he put his shoes on the same way. He ate the same foods. He got exactly the same. He put his headphones in the same way. He wore, everything. Like if he could put his swimsuit on, it was right leg, left leg, right leg, left leg, right leg, left leg, right leg, left leg. Again, the pool was always this way, always this way. And he did that for 6 months because then no matter what happened in the Olympics, he was so prepared. And that kind of goes back into the Navy SEALs talking about, I can't say the Latin term, but if you want peace, prepare for war. Right. So and then they would start messing with him. Right. They would like take a headphone out and like in his AirPods and like throw it away. And so he'd have to deal with that. And like then they would mess him. So if there was anything that ever happened that was off, he was prepared for it. Right. So I think that was pretty cool. So I was like preparing for that level of detail.
All right. Who else? Anyone else you admire for the sake of wanting to have a dinner with, or you sit there and
Nick Saban. Nick Saban. I'm a big fan. I'm a big Coach Saban fan. I respect what Coach Saban did. I think but I think what he's been able to do at Bama, because you got to think about it, he's changed every year. He's had a new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator, and he's never lost a tick. Right? He's always ahead of the game. One thing I know about Coach Saban is for like 2 hours, he will sit there and pace in the room about the coin flip. That's how attention to detail he is. He will pace. Okay, that goes this way. We're going to do this. We're going to do this, do this. So I think I met my dad's good friends with Phil Jackson. So, I mean, knowing what Phil did with the Chicago Bulls and that whole deal was, I'm sorry, we use a lot of sports guys, but I respect kind of what they did because they think a little differently in those aspects.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. When you think about Spencer, you offer an incredible service and you're working with some of the very best of the best. One of the things that we talk a lot about here is how does capitalism fit in with our mission as Catholics and helping the poor and helping some of the ones that maybe don't have the funding or the availability for some of that. When you think about it, and you're still building your business and, you've got to feed it and you are making a difference in the lives of other people. How do you think about that? And how do you balance that as a Catholic?
Well, one, it's never about money for me, right? It's always about, purpose, impact. What can we do to leave the world in a better place? That's the first off. It's that I look at that as like, okay, God gave me these gifts, right? And I need to maximize them in every single way I possibly give them, right? So if he gave me this gift, I need to maximize it. So that's one. I have a huge passion because, at some part in life, I was blessed to be around a lot of great people early on in my career. I don't know. I mean, they did things for me that somebody actually gave a damn about me and cared about me at some point. And I look forward, I try to do everything I can to give that back. And there's a lot of things I do for free. I don't need to go publicize it on social media. I don't need to go do, anything like that. Cause it's not about that. It's about giving back. It's about, fulfilling things because it's just not this whole look at me generation. And, if it didn't happen on IG, it didn't happen. It's kind of funny. But, I try to give back in every single way I can. If somebody can't afford it, like, I'm just going to take care of them because, eventually you don't know what I think the more you give in life, the more it's going to be given back to you, right? The more you take, the less it's going to be given back to you. So I'm always like, how much can we give? How much can we give? How much can we actually have we were working on implementing it, and it's called Secret Servants, right? It's part of our organization. Bob doesn't know this, but Secret Servants is just, we're just going to do something for somebody and they ain't going to know who it was. And it's just like the Secret Servants took care of you, right? Whether it's Thanksgiving dinner, whether it's buying Christmas gifts, whether it is just going and like spending time or, bringing somebody that I have in my network that's meaningful to them and hey, let's do a FaceTime real quick. Let's FaceTime this kid real quick. And we'll FaceTime, we'll have a conversation with them. They wouldn't even know it's even coming. So, doing things that, God put us on here to serve. I mean, I think that's one of his greatest qualities of leadership is leadership. And that's part of our core values is leadership and service.
So, some pretty common things in this space, right? You have the 80-20 rule, and then you have the 10,000 hour rule. So how do you view the combination of those two, where you identify the things that are most important to do, like the 2,000 hours of the 10,000 that will have the most results? And then how important is it to even bother getting in the other 8,000?
Great question. Let's talk about the 10,000 hour rule because I think that's just misunderstood. So with Malcolm Gladwell, if you really read his work and read what he was talking about, the 10,000 hour rule, he didn't talk about practicing the exact skill set for 10,000 hours. He talked about practicing that principle of that skill for 10,000 hours. So, we're talking about becoming a great musician. It's practicing rhythm and the art of rhythm for 10,000 hours, right? That's because that the whole 10,000 hours, they've seen that with especially like the sport of chess because they practice so much. There's some people it takes them 26,000 hours and some people do it in 7,000 hours, right? So that has a lot to do with the individual. So, understanding what is the principle you're trying to learn, do that for 10,000 hours, because I look at things, you got to create, when you look at a person or anything you're doing, you got to be resilient first, then you got to be sustainable. And the last thing is adaptability. The most adaptable person wins, whether that's in sport or life, right? The more adaptable, the more you can win. The second thing is the 80-20 rule, right? So yeah, you're correct. Like, economists, to be an economist, right? You look at what's the most important, let's do that. The one thing is that you also you have to look at is, does that 80% that people say, oh, you shouldn't do it, it's irrelevant. Does that 80% prepare you for the 20%, right? Is that a primer? Like if you don't do the 80%, the 20% is not going to work, right? I give you a case in point. So let's look at this. So if I have, and I'll use this because it's a simple analogy and I'm very familiar with it. So if I have somebody that I'm going to prepare to lift, 90% of their max weight. So let's say I got a guy who can squat 600 pounds. If I need to get him to 90%, let's just say it's like we were trying to get to like 550 that day, and I want to move it at a certain velocity, right? That means I need to move it at a certain speed because I want to train the nervous system. I don't want to train the muscles. So if I'm looking at that, I have to understand where he's at that day. And I might need to do that 80% to prime his body up, to get him in the state of flow, to get him in a mindset and a place to do that 20% to be effective at it. So I think looking at the 80-20 rule, but also, if you're doing 80, the one thing I also think of the 80-20 rule is, if you're doing 80% of the things right 80% of the time, then you can have some 20% of grace. You just don't want to. I think you just got to be careful with that because that 20% can turn 30%, 50%, and then you start losing things.
Hi, I'm one of the parents of one of the students here in the class, and I'm really impressed with you starting with the importance of sleep. I'm also a registered dietitian nutrition coach, and I know that we can't make any change with metabolism and weight loss if we don't get good sleep. Can you kind of expound on what you do to help people incorporate good sleep into their life, and maybe even some resources that you could suggest that we could use, especially not only in weight management, but also with our college students who don't sleep well or sleep enough?
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, like, okay, I'm gonna give you guys a simple strategy, right? Everybody likes simple, correct? Okay, cool. All right, so write this down. 10, 3, 2, 1. Okay. 10, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And so this right here can help you tremendously. First of all, in the 10 is no caffeine 10 hours before you go to bed. The reason being is that caffeine, even though you don't have you may not feel the effects of caffeine, it later at night, like some people are not caffeine sensitive, but caffeine lingers in the body that can affect that. 10. Now we go to 3. 3 is eat your last meal 3 hours before bed, because if you do that, it gives body time to digest, and it's not so hard on the system. Last thing is no work, or try not to do. I know this is one of the toughest. The last two are the toughest too. No work 2 hours before bed, because you want to start powering down. Like, you got to power down. And one thing is, like, blue light from like your screens, your computer, or the lights above you, or whatever, keeps you up and reduces and increases cortisol levels, which keeps you awake. So try to cut off your work time 2 hours before bed. The last one is no screen time 1 hour before bed. So if you can cut off your screens, cut off your devices, cut off your TV. There's this thing. It's called a book. It's not digital. Like, you turn the pages. It's pretty cool. It has great stories. So read a book. Do things to power down, because that right there will not only, as you feel like, okay, I need to learn more, but if you keep pushing red line, right, the car is going to break, right, and you're going to get to a point where you have depreciation of returns. Right? Everybody here understands business. So once you go past so far, you're not getting the returns anymore. So just, focus on that. I think that's one thing. 10, 3, 2, 1. Second thing is next thing you can do for just, one of the most, and a lot of these things are simple habits. Like, one, right when you wake up, drink 16 ounces of water instead of coffee. That right there will help you out tremendously, because hydration affects sleep. Also, two, it also helps with sugar control and insulin levels, right? So you don't feel this up and down, like, oh, I'm tired, energy and tired. Right. So just drink water. The next thing you can also do for very simplistic things is, right when you get up, if it's possible, it's not freezing outside. I know we're in the state of Ohio. It's a little different here, but try to get natural sunlight within 10 minutes, within 30 minutes of waking up. That right there will take you out, because like melatonin and cortisol work together, right? So then melatonin will start to decrease, which makes you tired, right? And cortisol will start to increase, which is what we want when we wake up. So as we increase cortisol, right, we start to wake up, we start to feel alive. That's kind of caffeine, dopamine that kind of goes all in there. So if you can get up, get 10 minutes of sunshine right when you wake up. If you can, get a 10-minute, 20-minute walk outside. That right there will make a huge impact in your life because, vitamin D also is a huge component of health. So if you do those simple tasks, 10, 3, 2, 1, no caffeine, 10 hours, eat 3 hours before bed, no work 2 hours before bed, 1 hour, no screen time 1 hour before that, you will start to see a significant difference. And that right there will help energize you for your next day. As far as resources, we have some on our IG and blogs. It's the same. thp.fit is our website and our IG, so you can find stuff there. Another great one is looking at the work of Dr. Cherry Mann out of Stanford. She found that in the last sleep, I just should give this one quick fact. If people who get over 8 hours of sleep, like increase their cognitive function and their accuracy and precision and decision-making process up to 20% at the low end and 15% by just getting 8 hours. So just think like if you want to say, hey, how can I work faster and do things in less time? Improve your sleep.
What would you say is a way or the best way to push past your mental threshold, training your mind to go to the gym every day and push yourself past where your mind is saying, we're tired, we don't want to do this anymore?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. First thing I would say is so how do you get to build consistency and make sure you're going every day? One, you gotta make it part of your daily process, right? If it's a part of your daily process and you can make the right decision, the easy decision, then you're gonna win. Example, if you wanted to go to the gym or if you want to get up and do something early, or you need to go to work early, like for me, if I know I got today, I had a morning appointment early, I need to be here at 6 a.m. I had everything prepped before I went to bed. I shaved last night, so I didn't have to shave this morning. So it saved me 5 minutes. I got all my clothes out, because that right there, if I'm going to go work out in the morning, you can lay your clothes out the night before. Guess what? Subconsciously, you've already committed to that decision, right? Now, when you wake up in the morning, you want to go to the gym, or you want to move, or you want to do something, it's no longer a decision anymore. It's done for you, right? You don't have to think, okay, where's my clothes? Damn, where's my socks? Where's that shirt I want? Now you just made it into a decision. Anytime, it's like creating automation in software, right? So if you have something that you're going to do, that you want to do, and you're going to do it over and over again, make it into an automation. One way to make it an automation is have a process for it, right? So that my process, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to have it set in there, set and ready to go. So I don't have to think about it. So one thing I think Bob might know this, and some people may know this, is that 70% of your day should basically run on autopilot, right? You go to work, you come home, you eat. It should just be like bang, 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 bang. The second thing is there's only 30% of your day that should be making decisions, and that should be on critical decisions. We have a problem, how do we address it? That's when you should be spending thought. So now, how do you push past a threshold? So one, you have to build up to what that threshold is going to be. You can't go from 0 to 100 overnight. You can't just go wake up, I never ran before, I'm going to go run a marathon. And if you want to start running, you need to make sure you're fit enough to run, not run to get fit. It's a common problem. People, first thing they do is they start running and they're not ready to run yet. So the second thing is doing things okay, so if you're going to have this tough, challenging task, let's just use the weight room, for example. If you're going to have this day where you're going to try to set a new PR, or you're going to, achieve something never achieved before, you need to think about, what do I need to do to get my mindset in that right spot, right? A lot has to go, and we've been having a lot of conversations around this, is breathing, right? Breathing. Before I spoke today, I did a breathing rhythm routine to connect to get my brain going, get my energy levels up, also give me mental clarity and focus. So preparing your mind to have that. Brainwaves, using this app called Brainwaves. It uses sound waves, and it's like there's certain frequency, alpha and gamma waves and stuff that can get you into that state of preparedness of what you need to do to attack that challenge. So I think the first thing is having a process, make the right decision, the easy decision. And then the last thing is, doing what you need to do, whether it's like to prepare for that challenging aspect to push through that threshold.
In terms of, going from football, and I found that really impressive, like just the level you got to in football. But when did you know, like, I'm going to be going from football to where you're at right now? And like, how did you make that transition?
Good question. I probably knew that. So I've always been interested in this since I was like 9, because like I was not the most gifted athlete outside, like from like genetically the most gifted. I had some talent, but I got developed really like 9 years old. I started running competitive track and field, which everything in sports performance, everything is a derivative of track and field training. So I went to 4 Junior Olympics as a kid. So there's always an interest in like, how do I get faster, right? How do I maximize my gifts? How do I maximize my God-given talent? So that's always been an interest. I mean, I used to watch VHS tapes of that you couldn't go rent. Like I got this, there was a speed coach named Tom Shaw at Florida State who worked like Dion and all these guys, and he's out of New Orleans. But I got Tom Shaw's tape. I would watch it, and then this is on VHS. So I'm dating myself a little bit, but I would stop and I'd write down every single drill. Then I would go type it up. I made the laminate sheet and would take out the field and do it at least once, twice a week. So it's always been an interest of mine. I think I really knew probably after my ACL surgery. And so I had the ACL surgery. I had pulled 2 hamstrings, one hamstring pretty significant in track leading into spring football, played spring football. And when I played, I probably shouldn't have played. And I have the video of it still, and I can see exactly what was going on. But there's a lot of things. But if I knew now, I probably could have prevented it from that standpoint. So I knew then that probably that was something of an interest. And then I got connected to a guy named Mackie Shilson in New Orleans that was doing things completely different that we're now doing mainstream. So that was an interest of mine. And then the shift for me from football to there, when after I had my labrum tear and the last year I played, I started as a freshman. Got injured in my sophomore year, started as a junior. And then the next year I changed. I started and went back and forth, but I was no one knew how to rehab me after the hip surgery. That was another challenge. And then they were just injecting me cortisol, and I just knew like this is not sustainable, right? This is not, I don't want to be able to walk. And so from there I made that shift. Once I made that shift, and Bob and I were talking about yesterday, it was like I burned the boat, right? There's no going back, right? This is it. I'm all in. I'm pushing all my chips in. I'm gonna go get it. And I took the same approach I did with playing my sport. I applied in the business sector. Like, okay, if you're the best in the world, I want to go where the best of the best at. I want to compete against the best and the best. I want to know what they're doing, and I want to see how good I am. I want to look at that, and then I want to do everything I can. I'm going to take extremely good notes, and I will hang out until the end of the day to find out what makes you different and how could I use that to apply it. Hey, how we doing?
Doing well, thank you. I was hoping you could explain more about the flow state and kind of how to enter into it, and explain even like some breathing stuff that you like doing.
Yeah, no, great question. So flow state, a couple of different things. One way to, there's a lot of talk right now, like Oura Ring and Whoop and Apple Watch about HRV. So, which is heart rate variability, which looks at how well you're regulating stress, your sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. So just but what you can do is on a scale of 1 to 10, judge where you're at, right? Because the way you feel internally has a direct correlation to how you feel, in your recovery state. So one, knowing where you're at. So there's different strategies, but getting into the state of flow is, once you understand where you're at, is knowing, okay, like if I need to do something for a long duration of time, like if I need to study for an hour, right? I can't get too hyped up going into that. So where I'm too hyped up, I'm too geeked up, I'm too caffeinated up that I can't calm down enough to get into a rhythm to study and do something for time frame and duration. So like to do that, like just if I can do something for a longer period of time, I will do things that like a fast-paced walk, right? A moderate effort 10-minute bike ride, just to kind of get to myself used to breathing and staying in that level. Another thing that you can do is now if I need to get hyped up and I need to be on and switch it on, I'm down and depressed, like doing things at a quick fast burst intervals. Like before I got on, I need to wake up, so I rode the bike for like 3 minutes, and then I did 10-second sprints at like 80%, 95% of my max, get my breathing rate and everything woken up, and then I rested using my Apple Watch, or rested for a minute basically, or my heart rate got back down to 127 beats, and then I would go again. So I was able to get myself woken up because I knew I had to be on. So that helps you get in the state of flow. Another thing you can do from a breathing standpoint, there's two of them I like. If I need to kind of get into a rhythm state, box breathing. So box breathing, everybody can do it here real quick. You're going to set up nice and tall. I want everybody to breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. You're going to breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I want you to hold your breath for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out through your mouth hard. 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold your breath at the bottom 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and now relax. Do that for 12 cycles, right? Will help you get clarity, focus, and will help get you into a state. So all you're doing is breathe in, hold, breathe out, breathe in, hold, breathe out. Just form the box, right? Box breathing. So that's a very simplistic way. If I need to get into more clarity and focus, it's called binary breathing. So same thing, you do 12 cycles, but you put your finger on the right side of your nostril, you breathe into your left, 4 seconds, switch, breathe out to the left. So you're going to breathe in to the right, out to the left, and you'll breathe back in the same nostril you went out on. So you're going to switch back and forth between nostrils. That right there improves oxidation in the brain, connects right and left hemisphere of the brain, and provides clarity. And you'll just cycle that 12 times, and then you can go back to a normal breathing rate. And then you can repeat it in another minute or two once you kind of get back to normal breathing rate. And just a couple of times like that can really make an impact into what you're doing. So those two ones I like a lot, especially if I'm dealing the binary breathing, especially if you're dealing a lot with screen time. That really helps kind of detect you.
All right, we're gonna do that in class, every class. Thank you. Sorry. One of the things you talk about flow, Spencer, you and I talked about this. And one of the things that I've learned that I've shared with the entrepreneur class from my own experience, the most important decision in many times in our life outside of our faith, which is always number, is also who we surround ourselves with. And to really need to that. And you and I talked about, the experience yesterday, we were just talking about sports in the locker room, right? How so many of the athletes miss the locker room in many ways more than the game, comparatively. But more importantly, the camaraderie and some of the things.
Right.
When you think about flow and you think about being on and you think about even the athletes, how important is that with who you're surrounded with and who you're kind of around? How do you think about that?
It's huge, because I like it. People are either bring you up, they raise your energy, or they take your energy from you, right? So you have to manage that. And I like to be around people that raise me up, right? That challenge me, that makes me want to do better. And I think it also goes into the music we listen to, the shows we watch, like that all has an effect on us, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. Is that there's just, you need to look at, okay, what am I listening to? What am I watching? If I'm watching, American Sniper before I go to bed or something like that, a movie like that, where it's very high intense, great story, great movie, love Chris Kyle. Chris Powell.
That's good.
So that's not a good bet.
I apologize. People are walking out now because they got to go to other classes. We're coming
Sure.
to an end. So first, I just want to say, Spencer, thank you for being here. Do you have a few more minutes for
Yeah.
people that can, if you want to say, you can, feel free to for a couple other questions. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there was some takeaway. Spencer, again, I just want to share, and I want to share it in front of the group. You know, you get a chance to meet special people. And it's interesting to me that the people that I meet that are most special in my life all had examples of overcoming significant adversity and are teaching me on how to be a better version of myself as a result of the experience. And I want to thank you today because I think you definitely did that for me as well as a lot of the people here. And really appreciate you. And thank you for making the time. Thank Panos for missing his workout. And, you know, especially after living in a hotel last night, it really meant a lot.